Okay, here we are with the class about constitutional remedies. And here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to have, what are constitutional remedies? We're going to go over actually probably the top 10, and then I'll give you some other, just a few other ones we're not going to go into in as much depth. But we will go over a few more. And then at the very end, I hope to be able to teach a little bit more about how to treat yourself constitutionally if you're trying it on your own. And even if a couple of people want to give some examples of somebody and see if we can kind of figure out what might that person's constitutional, one or two of their remedies might be. So what constitutional remedies are is it's a way to look at homeopathy where you're treating a person as a whole, physically, mentally, and emotionally. You're looking at their past and present symptoms, and it helps improve our body's immune system and avoids future occurrence of disease. These diseases come from a place where someone in the genetic line, there was a need to lean on or overcompensate. And it kind of can get passed on the same way, cancerous tendencies in the body can also get passed on. So can these different diseases in the body. And so I always found it interesting, especially like a remedy like pulsatilla, where somebody is usually kind of meek and mild, and they're always very people pleasing and the peacemaker, and they're always wanting to feel loved and very sensitive to rejection. And if you say to that person, well, then maybe usually that comes from a place of neglect in that person's life. Now, maybe that person didn't experience any neglect, but maybe their parent did. Maybe their grandparent did. Somewhere along the line in their family, usually someone experienced neglect, and therefore it led to this lean in their system constitutionally. And what happens is when you get that lean in the body, or that kind of weakness, because it had to overcompensate for not having love. So that child then tried to please the adult, tried to be kind and sweet to get the love that they deeply desired and weren't getting. So that's kind of where those kind of remedies are usually come from, places like that. Floricum acetum is another one. I remember studying, and they call it the perverted old man remedy, because it comes from a place of an older man that it wasn't, maybe he was just kind of had this tendency towards like younger women, because maybe there was a need that he wasn't getting love in a certain way or attention, so he went towards like getting attention from younger women. So this Floricum acetum has a very like a sexual tendency, and it also creates like fungus in the system. And then those things can get passed on. So whenever I see people, you see them as these like constitutional personalities almost, where you see the person as these are some weaknesses that they inherited, or the way that they're genetically wired and made up, that makes up some of the things they struggle with, some of the things we might see as strengths, but are actually overcompensating for other things. There's unbalanced areas of the system. So let's see. And you can have many constitutional remedies. Some people say, oh, what's my one constitutional? I get that question a lot in my practice. And I just say, you can have many. You might have a few though that you need a lot, that are very deep, that your body has been trying to overcompensate for your whole life. And some of those you need to start at a very low potency. You need to work up. You need to spend maybe years in that remedy. Those are your really deep constitutionals. Now you may have maybe like 10 or 15 other altogether constitutionals, which over time may have developed weaknesses that came out of trauma or life circumstances or stresses, ways that your body had to kind of lean a certain way. So the top, for me, just giving an example, my top ones were pulsatilla, because I inherited my parents had some neglect in their body. Mine were Nature Muriaticum, because I had to endure some difficult things in my childhood and I would just kind of stuff it down. I'll go into all these a little bit more. And Aurum Metallicum, those are probably my top three because I can be very driven and, you know, hard on myself at times. And those are ones that I've had to use for years. And they've affected me in different ways. And I can always kind of feel when I need them again, or in maybe a higher potency. You have certain kind of telltale signs, which I'll talk to you about more as we go into the remedies. And as you go through these, you may not fit all of the symptoms. You may think that, you know, maybe like 60% of that sounds like me, but the other parts, that's crazy. No, that's not me. Some people will read about these remedies and they'll say, well, I read about Nature Mur, and yeah, a lot of it fit, but a lot of it didn't. So that must not be my constitutional. And that's not true necessarily. There's like a depth to the constitutional remedies. So you may be like 50% in, or even 30% of those symptoms cover you. But when you look through something called the Materia Medica, or reading about these remedies in other books or online, you're going to see the furthest extent that remedy can go. So you might read about pulsatilla, and you might see some sexual things in there. And you're thinking, well, gosh, I don't have that problem. No, you may not, but you may have the weepiness, and you may have other hormonal issues and some other things. So don't necessarily write off the constitutional if you don't fit it completely. But if you fit it, I mean, you find the one in here, I guarantee everybody's going to find at least one of these remedies that fits them or somebody that they know. Just find the one, start there, to find the one that fits you the most. And that's where you'd want to probably start. All right, so we're going to start out with probably my most common remedy, sepia, which is the worn out mom remedy. I'm going to try to go a little bit slowly, but if you do need to watch this video again, I'm going to have the recording so you can go back. I know some of you are taking notes. Sepia comes from the ink of a cuttlefish. It's a squid. And what happens is when the squid feels threatened for their safety, they throw out ink and they escape. So therefore, it represents a little bit of that worn out mom that wants to escape her overwhelming family, or the problems in her life. She just needs to get away. Just leave me alone for 5 minutes. That's what you hear a lot of the sepia moms say. Can you just let me go to the bathroom by myself, or whatever? A lot of times sepia people, and it can be men too, but I've mostly seen it with women, have hormonal issues. They can have reproductive organs that need help. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's more of like an emotional thing. A lot of exhaustion, depression, just feeling overwhelmed. Women who might have menopause issues. After birth control pills, this is a really good remedy to take. They can be irritable, touched out, like just leave me alone. Like the husband tries to initiate some physical contact, just no, I can't, I can't deal with it. They don't want to be touched. Low libido, but they love movement and dance. And actually, this remedy came out and was discovered when there was an artist who came into Hahnemann, Samuel Hahnemann, back in the day. We're talking about sepia. And every time he would use sepia ink, so this cuttlefish ink, to make his paintings, and he would lick his finger and put the ink and spread it and make it look more beautiful. But every time he's licking the finger, he would be ingesting the ink. And so therefore he created this reaction in himself, and he was becoming like hormonal and emotional and irritable and exhausted, and all these things that we think about a worn out mom to be, was this 20-some-year-old man. And so Hahnemann went and started telling him stop using the sepia ink, and he had to use the remedy on him and actually counteract all that he was taking in. Now, another one that I want you to think about with sepia is called Murex, M-U-R-E-X, which is from a sea snail. And it's kind of like, I call it the sister to sepia. It comes and covers all the symptoms CPA has, except it doesn't go to low libido, it's very high libido. So that's the only real big difference between the two. Okay, the next one is nux vomica, which people call the American remedy because it's just very go, 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 stressed out, frazzled nervous system, irritable, overworked, can't sit still, has to be busy, like can't just sit there at peace, has to be doing something. You can also see this in kids that are like ADHD, ADD. Everything is, grabbing their attention. We call it sometimes a take it down a notch remedy. Nux vomica might have reflux or stomach issues. They can't fall asleep very well. So you'll see them at night just tossing and turning. Their mind won't shut off. They have constipation sometimes. They can be very impatient, hard to please. Ambitious, workaholic, but critical, and sometimes even noises and lights can bother them. And it's probably one of my top 2 remedies for addiction. So anytime people are trying to get over smoking or eating addiction or alcohol or drugs, look to nux vomica. When they take nux vomica, I always warn them, you're going to feel an inner jitter. It feels like something inside of you is shaking because it's actually the nervous system healing. And the more overtaxed their system becomes from all the stress, they depend on the props of coffee, alcohol, cigarettes, things like that. They may even awaken at night with stomach pains, and it's usually like a burning in the upper stomach area. And they're very competitive, and I probably give this remedy at least every other day, if not, it's just a very common remedy. That's why I started us out with it. Okay, if anybody has any questions too, just let me know. The next one is Argentum nitricum. Argentum nitricum is a very nervous remedy. Anxiety, fears. Usually I think of this as anticipatory anxiety, things that are going to happen. Oh, maybe this is going to, I'm worried about this. What if this person thinks about this and does that? What if the kids, get sick and die, or, whatever. They're just always nervous and worried. And they usually have digestive issues too. And a desire for sweets. But then they eat the sugar and it makes them sick. They usually have a lack of confidence, but they try to do good things. So they're just kind of trying to make up for that. Like there's this inner insecurity that they want to do these good things to make up for. They're worried about their health. They can be somewhat of a hypochondriac. Illogical fears about terrible things happening. That their child might be kidnapped and cut up into little pieces, or somebody's going to run over their child, and they can't leave the driveway necessarily because they're going to run over their child or something. Just almost sometimes illogical things coming into their mind. They can really have a hard time in interviews or events, speaking in front of people. They can have fear of heights or claustrophobic. They can be impulsive. They can talk loudly. And they can feel deep sympathy and be kind of hurried. You might see them walking fast, talking fast. I'm an Argentum nitricum, so there's nothing. I've also seen myself in these remedies too. So a lot of these I've needed at one point or another. But yeah, just every time I need this one, I feel just a real nervous feeling in my chest and stomach. Like, oh, something's going to happen. I wonder if this, and I just start getting real nervous, and then I take that remedy and it just calms it right down. Okay, so yeah, tell people when you're going to give that to them that they will feel more nervous and worried for a day or two, and they will feel stomach stuff happening. Okay, next one is aurum metallicum. AURUM metallicum. Now they are just, it's from gold. So you think about something you seek after, it's valuable. I mean, it's just, these are driven people. They can be perfectionistic at times, have too high of expectations. They carry around a lot of disappointment with themselves, with others. They might think to themselves late at night, oh, I should have done that. Oh, I should have done this. Or why didn't this person do that? There's always a should is part of their vocabulary. Now, when it's really bad, you can start to get suicidal thoughts. That's not always, but if somebody's going to commit suicide, they're usually an aurum metallicum, because they're the ones that will do it if they're extreme. Now, not everybody is extreme, but some people are. We're talking about aurum metallicum. And yeah, they can have a lot of depression. It feels like there's a cloud over their head and they just feel very blah. They'll just tell you, I feel numb. I don't feel anything. I just feel tired and nothing sounds good. Nothing from my past, nothing from my future, nothing sounds good. Very depressed remedy. They have a lot of achiness in the body. Now, not all people do, but you'll see people, oh, my elbow hurts, maybe like an injury that never healed. Oh, my knees kind of hurt, or they have arthritis. I saw a really strong case of aurum metallicum in a teenager whose dad was very driven and hard on the kids. And so she had it, just this juvenile arthritis all of her life. And at first I thought it was like vaccine detox remedies that she needed. And I found out it was just aurum metallicum was so deep in her. And I had to start at like a 6C, really low, because it was so deep. And we had to work through it for about a year and a half till we saw her really get rid of all her symptoms. They usually later in life will have heart problems. You'll see it like in the family too. Oh, my dad has heart problems. My grandpa has heart problems. They're very hardworking, intelligent. They always want to take opportunities to excel. I always think of aurum metallicum because I had a couple patients that were Chinese, and I love Chinese people. No, nothing, but there's a culture of just perfectionism, work really, really hard. And so I remember when I saw this TV show that had some Chinese family, and the little girl brought home a test, and it said, "Look, Mom, I got 100% on my test." And the dad looks at her and goes, "Why not 200%?" It's just, everything is not enough. And they're looking at like, you can't get a 200%. Why not? You should be able to, it's the should get 200, it's just not enough. So that always makes me think of aurum metallicum. They have many duties and sometimes chronic fatigue. You'll find this is one of the top remedies for seasonal affective disorder. So sad, right? When you fall and winter come around, or a cloudy day, they get really down. That's usually aurum metallicum or phosphorus. Some of the men can have low sperm count, impotency. And yes, so those are aurum metallicum. All right, the next remedy is arsenicum album. Oh, and when somebody takes aurum metallicum, they may feel more achy for a couple days and more depressed. I usually see that, so just warn people about that first. So arsenicum album is really good for anybody who's been exposed to chemicals. It's a really good chemical detox. They're usually very chilly, cold people, but not always. I've seen some arsenicum albums that weren't cold. They're always, this is like, for me, whenever I see somebody who's like perfectionistic, irritated with things being messy, like they walk into the house and everything's just messy and they just go crazy. just clean this up. Why is this always messy? You know, that's a really, like, for me, that's, oh, red flag. There's something come out. Well, we're going to test them on that. They almost always test for it, and then they just kind of calm down. Not that we want to be messy people, but it shouldn't like irritate us that much. So they have this chaos inside that makes them feel more irritated when there's chaos outside. So taking that remedy helps kind of calm the chaos within. Yeah, there's anxiety and fear. They're very wiggly. They can't sit still, fidgety. They're sensitive to chemicals. So you might see somebody that, you know, smells a perfume and they start to kind of be irritated from it. That could be an arsenicum album person. They might be pacing the room, have panic attacks. I've seen some people with OCD tendencies that are arsenicum album, like people that are obsessed with germs. You know, I knew one case where he couldn't stop washing his hands. They had to go through this routine of like 20 minutes of washing his hands before he could, you know, do anything. And arsenicum album was one of the remedies that helped solve his case. They can have scary dreams. Anytime they have like a runny nose or running eyes, it burns. Arsenicums, they don't like to be alone. And I have seen arsenicum help some lung issues. So if you look at like asthma cases, wheezing. They also have loose stools sometimes. So you might see like IBS case, that would be good. And they can be very paranoid. And so arsenicum album, when I usually give this to people, yeah, they can go through like chemical detox or just anxieties get worse for a day or two, and then they always get better. Okay, so the next one is Calcarea carbonicum, probably one of the top 3 remedies that homeopaths use. So calc carb is a very big teeth remedy. So if you see people that have always had bad teeth, or even a slow teether as a baby, will probably need calc carb. They also, like kids who have cradle cap, they always need calc carb or calc phos. Pretty much the problem with the calc carb person is that they don't break down minerals well, especially calcium. So what happens in the body is when you don't break things down well, you become more hungry, you start to gain weight, your body starts to become tired, bones start to break down. I mean, so many things in the body start to break down, which I'm going to tell you about here, because you don't have the minerals you need. Calc carb people don't like change. I actually remember taking a case in my studies of a woman who stayed in a very abusive relationship because she didn't want to go through the change of going through a divorce, things like that, to get out of it. It wasn't that she didn't want to not be loved, which would be like a pulsatilla reason to stay in a bad relationship. They're afraid to not be loved. But calc carb doesn't like that change, and they knew it would be such a big change in their life. They're afraid of that, so they just stayed. You know, calc carb people, they like dairy and sweets, but they don't digest it well. So you might crave milk and cheese and things, but then you eat it and you're like, oh, I feel really gassy and bloated. They may be overweight, hungry a lot. They may have fungal issues. So think about it, if you're not breaking things down well, your body creates this fungal state, which you can get dandruff and jock itch and athlete's foot, things like that. They can have a very sour breath and sour smelling body odors. So under their arms, their feet might smell sour. They can sweat on their head quite a bit. And they can have cold, clammy feet and hands. They can be very stubborn yet passive, which is interesting. So they can be real like, no, I'm not going to do that. But yet like on other things, oh, okay, whatever. There's a slowness to the kelp carb. And they usually have, not always, but a lot of times have problems with allergies. They get sick a lot. Their immune system is weak because they don't have the minerals they need. They can withdraw into themselves like an oyster shell. So that's what kelp carbs come from. So think about the oyster shell with this tough exterior of a shell, but inside it's a very soft, gooey person that has a lot of fear and not wanting to come out and travel or go around the ocean. They just like to stay in their own little spot. They're usually kids that are late to walk and talk. They just take longer to develop. They're easily tired. You'll see them just, doing easy things and they're just, oh, I gotta lay down. Just, They usually will have later in life bone issues, osteoporosis, things like that. Anemia will be common, and constipation. Now, another really good one that I use with kelp carb people is silicea. I find they're kind of similar, and they're great for minerals. So, and a lot of times when I treat people, they're working through these remedies, they will get more stomach stuff happening when they're kind of starting to work on it. So emotional, different things happening. They'll start to really stink as they're working through it. Their teeth might actually hurt when they're working through these remedies. So I've had it, even my son has needed this. And like the next couple of days, he'd be like, oh, my teeth are just hurting so bad. And then like it'd get better. You can start to see their cavities even going away, teeth improving. The kelp remedies like kelp floor, Calcarea floricum, can actually help straighten teeth. So I've seen teeth that were sticking out like this that a couple weeks later they were totally an adult tooth that actually straightened out. And always try to have people, when they're getting started in these remedies, actually ingest more minerals. So get them to get on like a really good mineral supplement, some bone broth. So their body's now finally all of a sudden absorbing it, and you just have to load them up with it. Okay, the next remedy is lycopodium, which my husband always said, lycopodium, like Madonna. Anyways, he always said it was a funny word. Lycopodium I always think of for constipation. Now, emotionally, they can be bossy, arrogant, but deep down is insecure. So they have this kind of shell about them. They can be bloated and flatulence. So yeah, there's a lot of farting, flatus, with lycopodium people. There can be edema, so swelling in the body. And then emotionally, there is boasting, like talking about themselves, and think about like a balloon, I would say, for lycopodium, which makes sense because you think about balloon full of air, right? Because that's what they're, very air, full of flatulence. They're outside, they're big, like a balloon, but inside they feel very small. And they can actually be bullies. So you can see them kind of being cruel. They're afraid of trying something new. They're afraid that people are watching, kind of paranoid that other people are thinking bad things about them. They can eat a lot because also the digestion isn't good, so they're not breaking things down. So then they keep having this hunger, and they can get gray hair early in life. Now, lycopodium goes well with plumbum metallicum. I would say those two are very similar to me. So if I ever have somebody take lycopodium, I always test them for plumbum eventually down the road. Next one is natrum muriaticum. This is from sea salt. This one I use all the time, myself included. Nature myrrh holds things in. Think of like to preserve food or something, you might try to pull, the water out of it. So you're kind of holding it all inside, stuffing it down. Now, it usually comes from, like I talked about before, a place of need. The need is I have to get through this thing and I have to go to work and I can't have my kids seeing me upset. So I have to just suck it up and move on. That's the mentality. They can be great listeners, but you can see them, everyone, and they may not even show emotion. Like all of a sudden you'll see their family member die and they're not crying. And you're like, what is going on? But then all of a sudden, maybe a week later, they just break down and just bawl. So it's kind of like you can hold it in only so long until you just, there's an explosion of emotion. When you use this remedy, when it comes out, it feels like a panic attack. It feels like this trembling in your chest almost and heart racing, because really what it is trauma being released. And a lot of times trauma is stored in the gut. Nature myrrh people usually have dryness in their body somewhere. They have dry eyes, they have dry hands, dry legs. Usually telltale sign is hangnails on the fingers. If you know somebody that gets a lot of hangnails, almost always they're going to be nature myrrh. They are very sensitive to hurts in life, and it will stick around in their head and just replay, this person, I can't believe they did this to me. Or, gosh, I'm just always the one getting mistreated in life. And they just replay it and they just can't get it out of their head, all the things that people have done to them. They can be very stoic and seem very just kind of like things don't bother them in life. They don't like comfort all the time, which is funny because my youngest daughter is a nature myrrh, and I had never experienced this with a child, even though I'm a little bit of a nature myrrh. My husband's way more, and so she's just like him. So I wasn't used to this when, she was hurt. Like I'd go up and try to hug her, and she'd be like, no, like she wouldn't want me to hug her, and I was like, what is going on? What's wrong with her? And my husband said, oh, I'm the same way. He said, I was the same way as a child. I just don't like to be comforted, because it's almost like they're already feeling so hurt. It's just such a woundedness when they get hurt, or their feelings or whatever, they're already feeling so deep and so raw that when you come over and try to comfort them, you're reminding them of how hurt they already are when they're trying to stuff it down. They're trying to just get over it, and you're reminding. And so it's like a pulsatilla loves, and a phosphorus, they love that affection when they get hurt because they need that love. But a nature myrrh just like, no, I'm fine, leave me alone and let me just stuff it, and I don't need you, kind of a thing. Nature myrrh usually crave salty foods. Sometimes we'll have sleeping problems. They'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking of revenge or unhappy thoughts, and they can be shy. Really good remedies similar to nature myrrh in my mind are Staphysagria and Ignatia. Now Ignatia is more like is grief, but it also and sadness and kind of depression, things like that. But it has a lump in their throat. And then Staphysagria is different because it's more of disrupted sleep pattern. Their circadian rhythm is off. So they usually feel really awake at night and really tired in the morning. Okay, so the next remedy is phosphorus. Okay, phosphorus is actually, if you think of a match, that is what makes the match light up and have a fire, is phosphorus, because they can just be like this flame of a person. They're the entertainer. Usually Hollywood is full of phosphorus personalities. They're storytellers. They like attention. They have addictions usually. So Nux vomica and phosphorus are your addiction remedies. Because what it is there's no boundaries in their body. They feel everything, every little emotion. They're so intelligent about their emotions and other people's emotions. Like there's no boundaries within themselves. They can feel if somebody walks in the room and has a look, they're the one who's like, oh yeah, that person's got a problem. They can pick up on things really easily. They also have some fears. So fear of the dark, fear of being alone. When they're kids, they're really scared of thunderstorms. When they're adults, they love thunderstorms. They can be very sensitive to noise because, again, phosphorus is from a frazzled nervous system from stress. So every little noise is like their body's already going like this. So when a noise comes along, it's like, ah, you know, that's too loud. You'll see them startled. If you see a movie theater and there's a scary movie, or, well, first of all, they wouldn't go to a scary movie because it's those kind of things really scare them. But if there's an adventure movie and all of a sudden it's like there's a bang, they're the ones in the room who are going to be like, ah. Those are the phosphorus people. They can be very, it's a really good stress remedy. Like I remember looking at this Highlands Nerve Tonic, this combination that they made a few years ago. And I was like, I wonder what they put in that stress remedy combination. And there were 6 remedies in it. They're all phosphorus-based remedies. I'm like, well, that makes sense. Cali-phos, calc-phos, mag-phos. So they're all hitting on the nervous system itself. Phosphorus people also are the ones who, they always get a cold and then it goes to the chest. So it's like have a runny nose for a few days, and then I got chest infection. Or I got, you know, whatever kind of chest infection. So I found that whenever somebody comes in and they say that to me, or they usually have lung issues, phosphorus helps to detach that so that the nose can just run. Of course, you don't want the nose running, but if it has to, then don't let it just go to another infection here. Just clear that out. Phosphorus people are usually cheerful and friendly. They're very impressionable. So they might be the ones at a movie that they're crying and they're just so moved and inspired by the movie. Very sociable. They like to be around people. Intuitive. Feels others' feelings, like I said before, and very affectionate. I saw one child, I remember he was so affectionate with everybody, always had to be touching somebody. And his mom said at night, he always had to hug everybody for like 10 seconds each in the family, and always was like, I love you, I love you, you know, just so wouldn't get off of it. Everybody was just like, get off of me all day. And he was a very deep phosphorus. He was like the 5th born. And so the mom, by the time she had that baby, was super stressed out. And so that baby was the most phosphorus of all the kids. The other kids may have had little touches of it, but he had it the worst. And so we had to start at like a 12C with him, really low, and work our way up. But he became very just calm after that. Like he was still affectionate, but not to that extreme. Okay, pulsatilla is the next remedy. I mentioned a little bit about this before. Pulsatilla are very sweet, people pleasers. But the problem is with pulsatilla, like I said, they're always trying to get love. Any little nugget of love they can get is worth it. They feel like there's an empty hole of love, of like being unloved in their chest. You can never get enough. I've even had one person who, she told me one, and I couldn't pick up on the fact that she was a pulsatilla until she told me this one thing. She said, I hate my birthday every year. And I was like, okay, why? She said, because I never feel like it's good enough that people don't love me. And no matter what they do, it's just never enough. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I started asking her other questions. I'm like, do you ever have this and this? We were focusing on some of their detox stuff for her for the first few months. So I didn't pick up on this because she seemed kind of stoic to me, but deep down, she was a pulsatilla because she had this very sensitive to rejection, always feeling unloved by people around her, can be very hurt by things that people said. You might find kids that might say, like, let's say you say, no, don't do that to your sister or whatever, and you have a stern voice. They're like, you don't love me. That's a pulsatilla child. They can also say, when it becomes really deep, they can become manipulative about it. So they need love so badly that they will give love to get it, just to get anything. So they'll be the ones to come up to you and be like, oh, you're just so, pretty. But deep down, and they do mean it, but deep down, they want you to say it back to them. So it becomes, there's manipulation that can be a deep pulsatilla level. Or they'll be telling everybody they love them, but because they want to get it told back to them. They can be very weepy. They'll be the ones to cry at a commercial. And very changeable in their emotions. They can change very quickly to like totally be happy in their marriage, and then all of a sudden their husband doesn't ask them to go watch a TV show with them, so they think that the husband doesn't love them at all. They can go just like that. They can also have digestive issues, so watch out, for that. Any kind of like loose stools, stomach pains, things like that. Now, pulsatilla is actually a windflower. So if you think of it, like there's a windflower that they usually grow on the side of hills or mountains. And they are the flower that, like, they're the ones that they're very rare breeds because they can stay alive with these strong winds. Why? Because they can bend. So the pulsatilla, think of them as if you look it up in the as a rubric, you see the rubric of yielding. They're very yielding because they want that love so badly that they bend whatever way you want them to just survive. And actually, funny enough, pulsatillas love wind. So there's a windy day, they will be out just loving the wind, which is just, I think is so fascinating the way you have remedies that represent what they come from. The people's personalities look like the substance they've come from. Now, some other physical problems a pulsatilla might have is they may have trouble getting pregnant. They may have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. They may have irregular menstrual cycles or clotted menstrual cycles. And another good sister remedy to pulsatilla is cyclamen. The only main difference being a cyclamen is a more chilly, cold temperatured person. And when somebody takes pulsatilla, you'll most likely feel more weepy, more insecure about yourself for a couple days. You'll wonder why people are thinking bad things about you and stuff like that. Okay, now I wanted to go through my website because I have some other remedies, because I know I have some people that are purchasing this video who are newbies. So those who are on with me today are more experienced. But I want to tell you about some more honorable mentions of constitutional remedies. That we have here. So I'm just going to walk you through. So if you feel like none of them, I mean, you will probably feel like some of these hit your, that hit you or people you know, you'll see yourself in here. But if you still feel like none of these are really a good match, or this issue that this person has, none of these you really talked about. So I want you to go to my website called Homeopathic Services Longview.wordpress.com. I no longer live in Longview, but that's my website. I'm not changing it, at least not yet. So you're going to see top remedies for chronic ailments. And so I want to go through a few of those with you. Okay. Now, another one is a good remedy that can be constitutional, also is Sorinum. Now that's spelled P-S-O-R-I-N-U-M. Now I remember hearing it one day that they're called the nosodes, that there's 3 of them that you usually use. Sorinum, Metarinum, which will be the next one I explain, and the last one is psychotic, which I don't think I've ever used that one. But so I remember my teacher once explained it to me this way. Imagine a person is broken down, their car broke down on the side of the road, and they're worried of how are they going to get back, and maybe they should fix the car. They're a little bit insecure about their situation. That's the first stage. So that's Sorinum. That's like your basis of this insecurity emotionally. And but then physically you have other manifestations. You have like itching and gut issues and lung issues. And so these kind of rashes and things like that, allergies. Then you have the next state would be if that person who has a broken down car is all of a sudden panicked and they are just in fear. And what if somebody comes and robs us? And what if this happens? They start to really go into a fearful panic state. That's your Metarinum state. And that's where you also get other physical things like nightmares. You can't sleep at night, anxiety, fears. Physically, you get really bad rashes, eczema that lasts a lifetime, psoriasis that lasts a lifetime, just deeper. So this disease drives itself deeper into the body. The last state is the psychotic. It's called psychotic, the remedy, which I've never had to use, but that's where the person who's on the side of the road is just in a panic, worried, but at the same time now they're just like going crazy because they can't handle it. So that's where you find a lot more like mental disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar, multiple personalities. It's gone so deep that it's taken over everything. And honestly, I don't even know the physical ailments. I would assume they're very close to like a syphilinum where you're getting into mutations in the body. So Sorinum, those can be your constitutional remedies also. Your Sorinum or your Metarinum usually. And you usually see those in the physical symptoms, sometimes the emotional, but a lot of times the physical symptoms that you have. So I remember when my homeopath, on his first visit, it was like a 3-hour-long visit, and he asked lots of different questions, which were great, but I kind of don't ask as many on my first visit usually, because I feel like a lot of times you can figure out based on the symptoms you have in that moment and things maybe you've dealt with your whole life, what your constitutional remedies are. So let me go through a couple other honorable mentions of the constitutional remedies. The next one would be Platina, is a really good one that I use a lot. So Platina is from platinum. So think of it like the poor man's silver, right? Wants to be silver, but it's platinum instead. So it's always kind of wanting to be something that they're not. The more extreme version of this, I remember I had this older lady I went to church with, and she always like wore these hats, and she was really kind of like, always thought she was so much better than certain people, and she's the more extreme of that remedy. But a more subtle Platina might be somebody who might gossip every once in a while, and who might kind of be a little bit arrogant sometimes, or like to talk about themselves, or like to just up themselves because somewhere in their lives they didn't get upped the way they should have. So they feel the need to do it to draw attention to themselves. I don't know many physical symptoms of Platina, only the emotional, and that's usually where I use it. Kids, it can look like they're the kids that come into my office and they are looking at me a lot to see if I'm looking at them. They just like the attention. They're the ones who are showing you their artwork over and over again, multiple times a day. Look what I did. Look at this. Look what I can do. Those kind of things. Now, another pair to that is palladium, which palladium is similar, but it's more of like it tries to look like a humble arrogance and like a little bit more sad arrogance. Like I'm just going to do this over here because nobody else will do it, or something like that. So those are really good ones. Ambergrisea is a good one. Ambra, Grisea, Grisea. That's your extreme curiosity. Somebody who asks one question after the other. Always looking for something else to learn. Can't just sit, be still. Hyoscyamus, Hyoscyanus. That's a big sexual remedy. So these I don't have a lot of physical symptoms for them, but they can still fit people constitutionally because they've been around for a long time. They're a huge part of their personality. Your hyoscyamus can be like a pornography addiction. You might have people that struggle with that. Almost always it's a hyoscyamus personality. Kids that maybe have their hands in their pants, or they're always obsessed with looking at, if they see their mom naked, they're like, oh, your boo-boos or whatever, or your butt. And they're always talking about body parts. That can be your hyoscyamus. Another one worth mentioning, lachesis. Lachesis, it looks like lachesis, is your snake venom remedy. And that, whenever I think of that, it's people that come in and they have really bad PMS symptoms, and all of a sudden their period starts and they feel great. It's like all of a sudden the bleeding just calms down, all this anger and irritability, and just they love their period because it makes them feel much better and much more normal. I had with this one woman, it was like 2 visits. And she had people coming to me, writing to me, telling me how horrible, she's a monster. And it's always before her period. And she was like totally normal other than that one thing. Once I gave her lachesis, just 2 months, she was like, everybody's like, what did you do to her? For that 1 week of the month, she's just normal now. All right, and then we have nitricum acetum. And nitricum acetum is your tantrum remedy. So a lot of anger. You see skin symptoms, acne, and nitricum acetum also. Let's see, going through here. Lyssin, Lyssin, could be a constitutional. Now that one is, I always think of, it's from rabies cell. There's a lot of rage with quick repentance. So they will just go off and do something like hit somebody or yell or whatever, but then they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. They like to tease and get a rise out of people. They'll be the kids who will stick their leg out for their brother or sister to trip on. It can be kind of bullyish because that one came out of a lean in their system to overcompensate from kids that were bullied when they were younger, usually become, constitutional adults. And they don't feel a lot of emotion from other people because they're so like stuck in their own trauma. I've seen clients where the wife will tell me about her husband who was bullied by his parents and uncle and brothers when he was growing up. As a husband, he was very bullying to his wife and kids. And one day when she said he took this remedy, he just felt like all of a sudden he saw her pain for the first time in 15 years. And he looked at her and he was like, my goodness, you're really suffering. But he couldn't see that before because he was so in his own world of just getting pleasure out of hurting others. So watch out for that one with kids and adults. It's a great remedy that can help turn things around. Stramonium is a great constitutional remedy. Now, stramonium, I don't know anything about the physical symptoms of that. I only know it's a nightmare remedy. So if you or a family member struggle with nightmares and extreme fear, try stramonium. Carcinosinum, great constitutional remedy. I use that a lot, which is spelled CARCINOSINUM. And that one is a lot of fear. Also usually has problems with their mother. So if they feel like their mother is crossing boundaries in their life or has done that, then they usually become this carcinosinum constitutional type. They also have overgrowths on their body. They'll be the ones with cysts and tumors and cancer and things like that, cancer that runs in the family. Let's see. Okay, so those are kind of my, oh, I'm sorry, another one, tuberculinum. I know that's the other one I want to do. TUBERCULINUM, like tuberculosis. Now, tuberculinum can be a very restless type of person. They can sweat from their head at night, their neck and head. They can be, just can't sit still. Always thinks like the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Like you can go to the most wonderful, you can go to Disney World with them. Or let's say this child goes to Disney World the next day or the end of the day, they're like, okay, where are we going now? Like, we just got back from Disney World. Well, yeah, but what are we gonna do now? So it's just, they're very like bored with anything, even though they enjoy it in the moment, but it's just like on to the next thing, on to the next thing. Tuberculinum also has lung issues, either constant like lung infections or asthma, difficulty breathing. Okay, let me see if I find another. Constitutional for headaches, a person with headaches, belladonna. I know I've explained this to some of my students here already, but belladonna is great for a person with migraines because of trauma. So that's going to be very helpful with those issues. Okay, so those are pretty much all the, I mean, I gave you a lot, like almost 20 different constitutional remedies there. But now I want to go through, because some of you are brand new to homeopathy, or maybe you've only been doing it for colds and flus and strep throats and ear infections. And you're like, I've always heard of these constitutional remedies and everybody says I got to go to a homeopath, but I don't have the money and maybe I can figure this out on my own. You can. I don't want to tell you you have to go to a homeopath. It'd be great if you could. But I want to also give people the tools, because I think you totally could do a lot of good on your own. And other homeopaths that are in training here, it's just great to be able to instruct clients and things like that, to be able to try these things on their own, or like they have maybe an aunt or an uncle that they know they need Nux vomica, but they won't ever come to a homeopath and they will never go do it for themselves, but they want to help this person maybe quit smoking or whatever they're dealing with. So you don't have to be scared to try these remedies. You can never do any harm. You can always try it, and maybe let's say you tried it for a few weeks and it didn't do anything at all. Well, move on to the next one. No harm, no foul. You just can't mess up unless you start to do it too often. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Now, if you can muscle test, that's even better. So you want to be able to start on a potency. Now, potency is like a strength of the remedy that is just as high as your body can go. Now, if people don't know how to muscle test, which some of you who are going to be watching this recording don't know how to do that, I would say start with a 30C. So let's say you listen to this video and you say, wow, that Nature Muriaticum sounds like me to a T, or it sounds like my husband, and I have to give it to him because he has all those issues. Okay, and you'll say, well, I don't know what to do. Okay, go to your local natural store, or go on Amazon, or go on Helios Homeopathy or Washington Homeopathy. There's different websites, and get it in a 30C. And take that one pellet. Now, usually if it's a Boiron brand, which is those plastic bottles with the turn caps on them, take 30C once a day, or once every other day for 3 weeks. Okay, so you're starting pretty low, and that's usually the body will, unless, and now if you don't see anything, but you're just for sure that that remedy fits and I didn't feel a thing, you might actually want to go down. You might want to find a 12C and start there. Now, sometimes that, if that's a remedy that fits you like almost 100% or 90%, you may need to start lower. But most of the time, people can handle a 30C to start with. Now, while you're on the remedies, make sure you avoid antidotes, which I've talked about in other videos. Your mint, tea tree oil, menthol, eucalyptus. You cannot ingest them. You can't put them on your skin. You can't breathe them while you're on the remedies, so they will stop the remedy from working altogether. Watch out for radiation, so don't have your phone in your pocket, things like that. You can go to my website and look at after the appointment, and you'll see everything that cancels out remedies. Now, this is a big deal because if you think, oh, I'm just going to still have my mint gum and hopefully this will work out, it will probably not work out. The remedies will not work. Now, you are taking it every other day. So let's say you did have something one day and you forgot. It's not a big deal because you're going to take it again, you know, in a couple days. So that's not too bad. Keep in mind, things get worse before better. So if you are going to try, let's say, Nux vomica for quitting smoking, maybe don't try to quit smoking the same day you take Nux vomica for the first time, because you'll be an irritable, angry mess. And it will be very hard to quit smoking on the day when that remedy has made everything worse because it's healing. It's like renovating a house, you're doing demo. So watch out for when you start taking the remedies too. The timing has to be right. I usually tell people to start on a Friday and before you go to bed. So your body can start working when you're sleeping. Make sure you have, you know, time to take off, or you can kind of rest for a couple days. You're going to feel a little bit tired while you're working through that. That's okay. That's all normal. Just think about when you go work out at the gym, are you going to get upset if your muscles are sore? No, you know, it's for a good cause. Or if you're getting off coffee, you're going to have headaches. So your body's doing something deeper that you've probably been born with, this issue, that it takes time to really heal that completely. I would recommend some great ways, like let's say you picked up on a remedy like pulsatilla and you're like, oh man, I really want to know more about that remedy, and send some information to my friend or my mom or something. Go and look online on Google and just type in Materia Medica pulsatilla. And you'll find some great online Materia Medicas, which Materia Medica is just like a description of all the remedies and what they're like emotionally and physically and mentally. You can find that all for free. So I also like a book called Materia Poetica, which I love this because it gives you a very short version of different remedies. So let's say arsenicum, and it's in a poem form, so it's kind of fun to read. So arsenicum album, it says, imagine being panicked. You'll think your life is through. It's early in the morning. You don't know what to do. Your family is sleeping. It isn't even dawn. You think you need to wake them because you cannot be alone. You might just have a fever. You're chilly as can be. Or maybe you are wheezing. You'd like to sip of tea. Your tummy is your weak spot. The stool's as loose as pea. All these aches are burning hot. You're restless as can be. And it goes on for another paragraph. But I just like that because it's a quick little summary, because you might find a client comes in and you're, or you know, a friend or something, and you just want to read more about that remedy. It's just a quick way to get the whole little snapshot of that. I also like to use Joette Calabrese did a really good Materia Medica. So if you want to read more about different remedy personalities, grab her book. You can get it on I think Amazon has it, or you can just get it from her website. I don't think it was too expensive, but I like it too because it gives a really quick snapshot too of that remedy physically and mentally. That's where I got some of my notes for tonight. And then you also have always your complete homeopathy handbook that goes through your different remedies in there too that you can read about. I always just found it so fascinating to see these remedies and personalities of different people. Let's see. Oh, you can also, if you're wondering, I wonder what, my constitutional remedy is, go and just find your most difficult symptom that you have. So let's say you have PCOS. And you're like, I don't know, maybe it could be pulsatilla. It sounded kind of like me, but I'm not sure. Maybe sepia sounds like me. Go look up on Dr. Homeo. Great place to start. Look up PCOS. Start reading through each PCOS remedy. Now, if you say pulsatilla's PCOS symptoms sound more like you, well, guess what? That's probably your constitution. And also some of the emotional stuff as you listen to this or you read up on these different sources and you say, wow, yeah, pulsatilla I do get kind of weepy, or I do get this way or that way. I'm not all those other things, but I do have the PCOS and I do have a couple emotional symptoms. Well, that's probably your constitutional remedy. So that's why a lot of times when I'm treating clients, I don't necessarily need to take a huge intake, because if they come in and they have cystic acne, and then they have, so that's your major, physical symptom. And then they have this other problem, and they have this, like maybe 2 or 3 other problems. I can see from just those problems that they have, what their constitutional remedies probably are. And emotionally, they might have this issue. And so you just kind of piece it together and try to find what they need. All right. Does anybody have any questions, or anybody have somebody in their life they've been wondering what their constitutional remedy is, or even for themselves? No? All right, because we're ending. I thought that would bring all those, I did all those notes. I thought they would bring me up to 8 o'clock. We're ending a little bit early tonight, but I love working with constitutional remedies because I think it's much more easy than we think it is. We always think it's so difficult. We have to go see a homeopath, and I recommend that. But a lot of people, you can kind of figure it out in on your own in a pretty easy way. What you need. Oh, and another good Materia Medica that I like is by
Katie.
Yeah. What's up, Marissa?
No, finish your sentence.
Oh no, I like the other Materia Medica. His name is Phatak, Phatak. He's a really good one too. I couldn't find it because my books are all in boxes right now. They just moved. Okay, yeah. Marissa, what were you going to say?
No, when you prescribe for people, will you, like, if you're focusing on detoxing, but you think you know what their constitutional is, will you put that in with it, or will you kind of do that separately? You'll get them over. How do you use the constitutional? Do you wait till they're really well? Because I know in class they're saying that's for people that are well, that don't have a lot of problems, and they just want to feel better in general. Then you look for their constitutional.
I think both are important. It just depends on what symptoms are showing the most and what are the causes. So, like for me, there were times where I thought for sure this person came in and I was like, oh, we're gonna need to detox and do all these different vaccine detoxes with them. And come to find out, their body didn't want to detox at all, even though they'd had tons of 20 years of flu shots and allergy shots before that. And I was thinking, oh, we're going to have to really hit this hard. And I kept pushing through the muscle testing, the vaccine detox remedies, and their body didn't want it. It wanted sepia and nature myrrh and things like that, because those were the most, and that was me. I actually, honestly, I remember Kyron Weed, who treated me for 1.5 years. I didn't want it. My body did not want to detox for 6 months. And he had tested me on those remedies, and it did not, because it needed sepia, it needed pulsatilla, it needed nux vomica, it needed some of my other deeper, just stronger symptom remedies, stronger causes. Really, you're looking for the root causes of what's the loudest voice in the room right now in that person's body. Is their worn out mom syndrome taking over almost every minute of their day? That's the one that the body's going to want to work with. The vaccines, they're kind of shoved down there in the fat tissue and wherever, where the body's like, I don't have time for that. I need to get this person to stop wanting to escape away from her family, or I want this person to just have some energy and feel like a normal person again. So let's get all this anger and get all these things fixed, and then we'll address, detoxing, things like that. So you always have to look at what's the loudest voice in the room and muscle test. Now, if you haven't, these are for my people watching the video later. If you don't know how to muscle test, I also did a class on that. So let me know. You can get that class also and learn how to muscle test. Learn how to do a motion code, which is another great tool for different issues. So,
question, Katie.
Yeah.
For like a woman who has real severe PMS too, and she seems almost like a different person with a different personality or constitution, like how do you go about that? You just work with your hormone remedies, or?
A woman who has, sorry, you cut a little bit, so she has severe PMS.
Yeah, like if her mood and personality and just mental state is really like severely changes during that time, extreme changes. Do you, in terms of like finding her constitutional remedy, do you look at that closer, how she is during that time?
Yeah, I mean, it could be the lachesis. It depends on if all of a sudden her period starts and she gets better, then that's pretty clearly a lachesis case. Now, let's say it doesn't. Let's say during her period, she's also pretty irritable. Okay, well, then you might want to look up and these are for my more advanced students, you're going to look up in the Synthesis app of menses before, anxiety, things like that. You're going to look up those kind of symptoms. And then you're going to see what comes up there, and then cross-reference that with maybe another symptom that they need. Let's say they also have dry lips or something, or they have very hurried speech, or any other symptom that they might have. Just try to cross-reference that, but you're going to always keep in mind that that's a really rough symptom. Now you can also just go on to, like, I think Dr. Homeo has some good ones for PMS. I mean, I would just think of sepia, pulsatilla, your hormone ones, looking at, the adrenal glands and thyroid, things like that, making sure they're not drinking too much caffeine, and things like that can affect the hormones. All right. Anybody else have a certain issue you're thinking about, or a person that you might wonder what their constitutional remedy might be? All right. Well, thank you guys for coming tonight. And I'm going to stop the recording and have a good, I'm going to still continue with the rest of the class here. So